Part 1. The Rejected. Galaxy was cruel to those who could not hunt. Every species in the Galactic Coalition proved their worth through one thing: the ability to kill. Speed, claws, venom, strength. These were the currencies of respect. The Vellani were proud hunters. Their silver fur and amber eyes feared across 12 star systems. They measured everything by the hunt. A Vellani who could not hunt was not truly Vellani at all. Rila learned this truth when she was only 12 cycles old. She had been born wrong. Her right hind leg twisted inward, making her slow and clumsy. Her claws, which should have been sharp as blades, grew dull and brittle. She could not run. She could not climb. She could not chase prey through the forests of her homeworld like other cubs her age. For 12 cycles, her pack tolerated her. They fed her scraps from their kills. They let her sleep at the edge of the den. They never touched her with affection, but they did not harm her either. Rila thought this was enough. She thought she could survive on the edges of her people's world. She was wrong. The day the elders came for her started like any other. Rila was sitting alone near the water stream, watching the other cubs practice their hunting forms. Their movements were beautiful, quick, and deadly. She had tried to copy them once, years ago. The other cubs had laughed so hard that she never tried again. 3 elders approached her. Their fur was dark with age, their eyes cold with purpose. "Stand up, defective one," the chief elder commanded. Rila stood. Her twisted leg made her lean to one side. She hated how weak she looked. "The pack has decided," the elder continued. "You have reached the age of the first hunt. But you cannot hunt. You will never hunt. You are a waste of food and space." Rila's heart began to pound. "I can do other things. I can help with. There is nothing else." The elder's voice cut through her words like a claw. "A Vellani hunts or a Vellani dies. You cannot hunt. Therefore, you must go." They dragged her to the transport ship that same day. Rila searched the crowd for her mother, hoping for some sign of protest, some flash of love. Her mother stood at the back, her amber eyes fixed on the ground. She did not look up. She did not say goodbye. The transport took Rila to Keth 7, an old orbital station in the outer reaches of Coalition space. The elders did not kill her directly. That would be dishonorable. Instead, they left her in a place where death would find her on its own. Keth 7 was a graveyard for the forgotten. Broken ships docked in its rusted bays. Criminals and refugees wandered its dark corridors. The station systems barely functioned, and the air always smelled like metal and decay. Rila survived for 3 station cycles in the lower maintenance tunnels. She ate scraps from garbage processors. She drank recycled water that tasted like chemicals. She hid from the enforcement drones that patrolled the upper levels and from the larger creatures that hunted in the dark below. Every night, she curled into a ball and tried not to think about her mother's face. Every morning, she woke up surprised that she was still alive. Her silver fur grew dull and thin. Her ribs began to show through her skin. She was slowly starving, and she knew it. But she was too proud to beg and too weak to steal. She simply waited for the end. Then the human ship arrived. Rila heard it before she saw it, a deep humming sound that vibrated through the station's walls. She pressed herself deeper into her hiding spot behind a waste processor, afraid of what new danger might come. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Heavy boots walking slowly. A light swept across the darkness. "Hello?" A voice called out. It was deep but gentle. "Anyone down here?" Rila held her breath. She had heard stories about humans. They were a strange species. No claws, no fangs, no natural weapons of any kind. The Vellani considered them barely better than prey animals. They survived only because they bred quickly and built machines to fight for them. The footsteps came closer. The light found her, A human male stood in the corridor entrance. He was tall, with dark hair turning gray at the edges and a face lined with years of hard work. His eyes were brown and warm, filled with something Rila did not recognize. "Hey there," he said softly, crouching down to her level. "You hungry?" Rila bared her teeth. It was a pathetic threat. She was too weak to bite through paper, let alone human skin. But instinct demanded she try. "I don't need help from prey species," she growled. The human laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but a warm and genuine sound that confused her completely. "Prey species? Is that what they're calling us now?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small package. "Name's Doyen. I run cargo between the outer colonies. Found this station on my route and thought I'd check for salvage." He unwrapped the package, revealing a dense brown bar. "This is a ration bar. Tastes terrible, but it'll keep you alive. Interested?" Rila's stomach clenched with hunger. The smell of the food was overwhelming. "Humans have no claws," she said, reciting what every Vellani cub learned. "No fangs. You are slow and weak. You survive only because you breed fast and die faster." Interesting theory. Dahyun set the ration bar on the ground between them. "Tell you what to eat first, and then you can explain all the ways humans are inferior. Deal?" She wanted to refuse. Every part of her Vellani pride screamed at her to reject this charity from a lesser species. But she was so hungry. Rila grabbed the bar and ate it in 3 bites. It tasted like cardboard and salt. It was the best thing she had ever eaten. Dohyun watched her with patient eyes. When she finished, he pulled out another bar and offered it to her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rila." She hesitated. "Of no pack. Why no pack?" The question cut deep. Rila extended her twisted leg, her malformed claws. "I cannot hunt. I am useless. My people have no place for useless things." Dahyun studied her for a long moment. His expression shifted, not to pity, which Rila would have hated, but to something else. Something like recognition. "I had a weak heart when I was young," he said quietly. "Couldn't run. Couldn't play sports. My teacher said I'd never amount to anything useful." He smiled. "They were wrong. You are still weak," Rila pointed out. "Absolutely. Still can't run very far. Heart still gives me trouble." He stood up and offered her his hand. "But I captain a ship, employ 4 people, and move cargo across 6 star systems. Turns out there's more than one way to be useful." Rila stared at his hand. Among the Vellani, touch was reserved for family and close pack members. This human was offering it freely to a stranger, a defective stranger from a species that considered him prey. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "I have nothing to offer you." Dohyun smiled again. "Maybe not yet, but I've learned to see potential where others see problems." He kept his hand extended. "Come with me, Rila of no pack. Let me show you who you can be." She took his hand. It was the first time anyone had touched her with kindness since she was born. Part 2. The ship called Perseverance Rila expected a cage. She had seen how other species treated the weak. The strong always controlled the weak. The powerful always used the powerless. This was the way of the galaxy. This was the only truth she had ever known. So when Dohyun led her through the corridors of his ship, she waited for the trap. She watched for the door that would lock behind her, the collar that would go around her neck, the chain that would bind her to some dark corner. Instead, he showed her a cabin. It was small but clean. A bed stood against one wall, covered with soft blankets. A desk sat beneath a round window that showed the stars outside. The room smelled like recycled air and something faintly sweet flowers, she would later learn. From a plant Dahyun kept on the bridge. "This is yours," he said. Rila walked in slowly, her twisted leg dragging slightly on the metal floor. She touched the bed. The blankets were warm under her paw. "I don't understand," she said. "This is a room. A real room." "Crew quarters," Do-yoon corrected. "If you're staying on this ship, you're crew. Crew gets quarters. But I cannot work. I told you. You told me you can't hunt." He leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. "Good thing we don't hunt on this ship. We haul cargo." Very different skill set. Rila sat on the bed. The mattress molded to her body, supporting her weight in a way that felt almost like an embrace. She pressed her nose against the window, staring at the endless field of stars. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Gets even better once we're moving." The hyperlanes look like rivers of light. Do-hyun pushed off from the doorframe. "Get some rest. I'll introduce you to the crew at dinner." He left. The door stayed open. Rila stared at that open door for a long time. No lock, no guard. She could leave whenever she wanted. She could walk right off this ship and disappear back into the station's darkness. But for the first time in 3 cycles, she didn't want to disappear. She slept for 14 hours straight. When she woke, the ship was humming. The stars outside her window were moving long streaks of light that painted the darkness in colors she had never seen before. They were traveling through hyperspace. Rila found her way to the common area by following the sound of voices and the smell of food. The room was larger than her cabin, with a long table in the center and cooking equipment along one wall. 4 humans sat around the table, eating and talking. They all stopped when she entered. "There she is." Do-hyun stood up and gestured to an empty seat. "Everyone, this is Rila. She'll be staying with us for a while." "Rila, meet the crew." The first to speak was a woman with short black hair and burn scars covering both her hands. She smiled warmly. "I'm Yoonji, ship's engineer. I keep this old bucket from falling apart." Next was a young man with a round face and bright eyes. "Tae-woo, I fly the ship." "Don't worry, I've only crashed twice, and both times were mostly on purpose." "That's not reassuring," said the woman beside him. She had a soft voice and gentle features. "I'm Nari, ship's medic. I'll need to examine you later. Make sure you're healthy." The last crew member was an older man with gray hair and glasses perched on his nose. "Junho, communications and logistics. I also paint miniatures in my free time, if you're ever interested." Rila looked at each of them carefully. She was searching for the threat, the hidden danger that must exist in this strange place. But all she found were 5 humans looking at her with curiosity and kindness. "Why are you all staring at me?" she asked. "Because you're interesting," Tae-woo said. "We don't get many Vellani on cargo ships. Aren't your people all about hunting and stuff?" "Tae-woo," Nari said sharply. "Manners. It's a fair question." Rila limped to the empty seat and climbed onto it. The chair was too big for her small body, but she sat with as much dignity as she could manage. "Yes, my people hunt. I cannot hunt, so I am here instead." She waited for the judgment, for the pity or the contempt. Instead, Yoonji just nodded. "Makes sense. I can't hunt either. Bad hands." She held up her scarred fingers. "Dropped a plasma torch on them when I was 20. Can barely hold a fork some days, let alone a weapon. I have anxiety," Tae-woo added. "Get panic attacks in combat situations. Totally useless in a fight." "I faint at the sight of blood," Nari admitted. "Outside of a medical context, I mean. Put me in an emergency room, and I'm fine. Show me a cut finger at a dinner party, and I'm on the floor." "My eyesight is terrible," Junho said, tapping his glasses. "Can't see past my own nose without these. And my reflexes are shot. Too old for anything physical." Rila looked at Do-hyun. "Weak heart, remember?" He sat back down and started eating. "Can't run more than 20 meters without getting winded." She was stunned. By Villani standards, every single person in this room was defective. They were all broken in some way. They should have been cast out, abandoned, left to die like she had been. But here they were, flying a ship between the stars. "I don't understand," Rila said. "How do you survive?" "The galaxy values strength, power, the ability to hunt and fight and kill." Yunji laughed. "Does it? Or does the galaxy value usefulness?" "They are the same thing. Are they?" Yunji gestured around the room. "Taiwu can't fight, but he can fly this ship through an asteroid field without breaking a sweat. Nari faints at blood, but she saved all our lives at least twice with her medical skills. Junho can't see well, but he can negotiate a contract that gets us 20% above market rate. And me?" She held up her scarred hands again. "These hands can't hold a weapon, but they can rebuild an engine from scrap parts. They can repair systems that experts said were beyond saving." Rila was quiet for a long moment. Something was shifting inside her, some belief she had held her entire life beginning to crack. "The Villani say there is only one way to have worth," she said slowly. "The hunt?" "The Villani are wrong," Doyun said simply. "Humans learned a long time ago that there are 1,000 ways to be useful. We just had to figure out which one fit each of us." That night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, Rila sat in the cargo bay alone. The ship hummed around her, a constant and comforting sound. Through the small windows, she could see the stars sliding past. Do-hyun found her there an hour later. "Can't sleep?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Yunji said something that confused me. She said there are many ways to be useful, but I don't know any of them. Rila looked at her twisted leg, her dull claws. "All I was ever taught was hunting. All I ever failed at was hunting. If I'm not a hunter, what am I?" Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "When my teachers told me I'd never be useful, I believed them for a long time. I thought my weak heart meant I was broken, wrong, less than human." He smiled sadly. "It took me years to understand that being different isn't the same as being worthless. How did you learn?" "I found people who saw me differently. People who looked at what I could do instead of what I couldn't." He turned to face her. "You've spent your whole life being told you're nothing because you can't hunt. But Rila, you survived alone on that station for 3 cycles. Do you know how hard that is? Most people would have given up in a week." Rila had never thought about it that way. "You're a survivor," Do-hyun continued. "That means you're smart, you're tough, and you don't quit. Those are valuable things. We just need to figure out how to use them. And if you can't, if I'm truly useless," Do-hyun laughed softly, "then you'll be the first truly useless person I've ever met. And I've been around a long time." He stood up and offered her his hand, just like he had on the station. "Give yourself time, Rila. Give us a chance to show you who you can be." She took his hand. It was becoming easier each time. Part 3. The learner Rila discovered her gift by accident. It happened 6 weeks after she joined the crew of the Perseverance. She had been trying to make herself useful in small ways, helping Junho organize supply lists, watching Yunji work on the engines, learning the names of the different star systems they traveled through. The crew was patient with her, but Rila could feel her own frustration growing. She wanted to contribute. She needed to prove that Do-hyun's faith in her wasn't a mistake. One evening, she was sitting in the cargo bay, staring at the shipping manifests on a datapad. Junho had asked her to check the numbers while he repaired a communication relay. It was simple work, barely worth doing. But Rila did it anyway. As she scrolled through the data, something strange happened. The numbers began to form patterns in her mind. She could see connections between the different shipments. This cargo went to that station, which then ordered supplies from another system, which sold goods to a third location. The patterns were like threads weaving together, creating a picture that made perfect sense. She noticed something wrong. Their current route took them through 5 different stations over the next 2 weeks. But according to the patterns Rila was seeing, they were wasting fuel. The path wasn't efficient. They were doubling back on themselves, crossing the same shipping lanes twice, losing time and credits with every jump. Rila limped to the bridge, where Dahyun was reviewing reports. "Captain," she said, "I think there's a problem with our route." Dahyun looked up. "What kind of problem?" "We're losing fuel. The path isn't efficient." She hesitated. "I can see a better way." Dahyun studied her for a moment. Then he pulled up the navigation charts on the main screen. "Show me." Rila climbed onto the chair beside him and pointed at the display. The numbers and paths were clear in her mind, as obvious as colors and shapes. "Here," she said. "We're going to Station 3 before Station 2. But Station 2 is closer to our current position. If we reverse the order, we save 6 hours of travel time. And here," she pointed to another section of the route. "We're scheduled to pass through the Carrot shipping lane. But the Meridian lane runs parallel and has less traffic. We could cut our transit time by another 4 hours." Dahyun was silent. He pulled up more data: 3 months of shipping records, fuel consumption reports, profit margins. "Can you see patterns in all of this?" Rila looked at the sea of numbers. To most people, it would have been overwhelming. But to her, it was beautiful. The data flowed like water, forming streams and rivers that led to clear destinations. "Yes," she said, "I can." Over the next hour, she identified inefficiencies in their routes that had cost them 15% in fuel over the last quarter. She found scheduling conflicts that had forced them to wait at stations longer than necessary. She discovered pricing patterns that could help them predict the best times to buy and sell cargo. Taiwu had wandered in halfway through, curious about what was happening. He stared at the screens with his mouth open. "How did you see all that?" he asked. "I've been flying these routes for 6 years. I never noticed any of this." "The numbers speak," Rila said, struggling to explain something that felt as natural as breathing. "They have shapes, colors. When something is wrong, the colors don't match. When something is right, they flow together." Nari was called in to run some tests. She scanned Rila's brain, measured her cognitive responses, compared the results to known Vellani baselines. "This is remarkable," Nari said, looking at the data. Vellani brains process mathematical relationships differently than human brains. More spatially, more intuitively. It's like... She searched for the right words. "It's like she can see math the way we see images." "In a hunting culture, this would be worthless," Yoonji observed. "You can't chase down prey with mathematics." "But in a trading culture," Dohyun said slowly, "it's priceless." He turned to Rila. His eyes were bright with something that made her chest feel warm. "You're a navigator," he said. "A natural one. Maybe the best I've ever seen." Rila felt something unfamiliar bloom inside her. It took her a moment to recognize it. Pride. Not the false pride of the Vellani, which was built on violence and dominance. This was different. This was the pride of discovery, of finding something valuable inside herself that she never knew existed. 2 weeks later, they docked at Station Helix 4 for supplies. Rila stayed close to Doyen as they walked through the crowded corridors. She was still nervous around strangers, still waiting for someone to point at her twisted leg and call her defective. But she also watched everything. The flow of beings moving through the station, the rhythm of buying and selling, the subtle dance of negotiation between merchants and customers. It was all data, all patterns, all information waiting to be understood. A Crethan merchant approached them at the fuel depot. Crethans were large, insect-like creatures with 4 arms and 4 eyes. This one wore expensive clothing and spoke with the smooth confidence of a professional trader. "Ah, humans," the merchant said. "Looking to refuel? I can offer you an excellent price. Only 30 credits per unit." Dahyun opened his mouth to respond, but Rila spoke first. "The market rate dropped 3% yesterday," she said. "The Meridian refinery came back online after their maintenance shutdown. Your current price reflects the old rate plus a 12% markup. Standard markup is 7%. The Crethan's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "The cub knows numbers. The cub knows when she's being lied to," Rila said. She was surprised by her own boldness. A month ago, she would have hidden behind Do-yoon and said nothing. But something had changed. She had found her strength, and it gave her courage she never knew she had. The merchant stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a clicking sound that came from deep in his throat. "Fair enough, small one. 24 credits per unit. That's my final offer." 22, Rila countered. "The actual market rate plus standard markup." Another long pause. Then the Crethan nodded. 22. You drive a hard bargain for one so young." As they walked away with their fuel purchased at a fair price, Do-hyun rested a hand on Rila's head. It was a human gesture of affection that she had come to treasure. "See what happens when you find your strength," he said. "I still can't hunt," she replied, but the words came out differently now. Before, they had been a wound, a painful admission of failure. Now they were simply a fact. One small fact among many others. "Neither can I," Dahyun said. "Doesn't seem to be stopping us." Over the following months, Rila's role on the ship grew. She became the primary navigator, plotting courses that saved them time and fuel. She became the trade analyst, identifying profitable cargo routes and predicting market changes. She became, in many ways, the heart of their operation, the one who saw the patterns that everyone else missed. The crew treated her as an equal. More than that, they treated her as family. Yoonji taught her about engines and machines. Taiwoo let her sit in the co-pilot seat and showed her how to read the stars. Nari made sure she ate properly and got enough sleep. John-ho shared his painting hobby with her, teaching her how to create beauty with her own paws. And Do-yoon was always there. Patient, supportive, proud. One night, Rila found herself looking in a mirror in her cabin. Her silver fur had grown sleek and healthy. Her amber eyes were bright and clear. She still had a twisted leg and dull claws. She was still, by Villani standards, defective, but she no longer felt defective. She felt like Rila of the Perseverance, navigator, analyst, crew member, family. She felt like herself, and for the first time in her life, that was enough. Part 4. The return 6 cycles passed like water through open fingers. Rila grew from a frightened cub into a confident young adult. Her silver fur was sleek and well-groomed now, her amber eyes sharp with intelligence. Her twisted leg never straightened. It never would. But she moved with a confidence that made it seem almost unimportant. A slight difference, nothing more. Not a mark of shame. The Perseverance had grown too. What started as a single cargo ship was now a small fleet of 3 vessels. The crew had expanded from 5 to 20. Rila's navigation skills and market predictions had doubled their profits, then tripled them. Other captains began requesting her route calculations. Trading companies offered to buy her contracts. She turned them all down. The Perseverance was her home. Its crew was her family. No amount of money could change that. Do-hyun had officially made her the fleet's chief navigator and trade analyst. It was a fancy title for what she had already been doing, but it meant something to her. It meant she had earned her place through her own work, her own skills, her own worth. She was in her office, a real office now, with proper equipment and comfortable furniture. When the message arrived, It came through the emergency broadcast system, tagged with priority codes that demanded immediate attention. Rila opened it and felt the blood drain from her face. The message was from the Villani homeworld. A plague had struck the great hunting grounds. The beasts that the Villani depended on for food were dying in massive numbers. Their meat had become toxic, their hides worthless. 3 packs had already starved. More would follow unless help arrived soon. They were asking for aid. From anyone. From everyone? Even from the humans they had always considered prey. Rila read the message 3 times. Her paws were shaking. She found Do-yoon on the bridge of the main ship, reviewing supply inventories. He looked up when she entered and immediately noticed something was wrong. What happened? She showed him the message. He read it in silence, his expression growing more serious with each line. The Villani homeworld, he said. Your people. They were never my people. The words came out harder than she intended. They threw me away, called me defective, left me to die. I know. Dawn set the datapad down. So what do you want to do? The question surprised her. What do you mean? We have food supplies, medical equipment, 3 ships that could make the journey in 4 days. He looked at her steadily. We could help them. The question is, do you want to? Rila was silent for a long time. Memories flooded through her mind. The elders dragging her to the transport. Her mother refusing to meet her eyes. The cold darkness of Keth 7, where she had waited to die alone. They had cast her out. They had declared her worthless. They had abandoned her without a second thought. And now they were the ones who needed help. I should want them to suffer, Rila said quietly. Part of me does. Part of me wants to ignore this message and let them face the consequences of their cruelty. That would be understandable, Do-hyun said. No one would blame you. But you would help them anyway, wouldn't you? Do-hyun smiled sadly. Probably. Humans have a saying, kill them with kindness. It doesn't mean actual killing, obviously. It means that the best revenge against people who hurt you is to be better than they were. To rise above their cruelty. Rila thought about this. You saved me when you had no reason to. You showed me that worth isn't measured by what you're born with. It's measured by what you choose to do. She looked at her captain, her mentor, the closest thing to a father she had ever known. What would humans do in this situation? We'd help, Do-yoon said without hesitation. We always help. Even when it hurts. Even when they don't deserve it. It's just who we are. Rila nodded slowly. Then so will I. The fleet arrived at the Villani homeworld 3 days later. Rila stood at the viewport of the main ship, watching the planet grow larger. She had never seen it from space before. It was beautiful green forests and blue oceans and white clouds swirling over everything. A hunter's paradise. But even from orbit, she could see the scars. Brown patches spreading across the green where forests had died. Smoke rising from emergency camps. Ships clustered in orbit, their cargo holds empty, waiting for supplies that might never come. The pack elders were waiting when they landed. Rila recognized the chief elder immediately, the same one who had ordered her exile all those years ago. He was thinner now, his once proud fur dull with stress and hunger. His ribs were visible beneath his pelt. We are grateful for your aid, the chief elder said stiffly. He was clearly uncomfortable accepting help from humans. We did not expect your kind to answer our call. We go where we're needed, Do-hyun replied calmly. My trade analyst will coordinate the distribution of supplies. He stepped aside. Rila stepped forward. The silence was absolute. Every Villani in the crowd froze, their amber eyes wide with shock. Rila? A voice came from somewhere in the back, thin and trembling. Rila of Pakvaran? Rila's mother pushed through the crowd. She was old now, her silver fur streaked with gray. She stared at her daughter as if seeing a ghost. "Rila of the Perseverance," Rila corrected. "Of no pack." "You made sure of that." The chief elder's eyes narrowed. "The defective cub. You survived." "I did more than survive." Rila activated her datapad, projecting holographic displays into the air. Supply routes, distribution schedules, medical protocols, population maps, all the data she had prepared during the journey. "Your hunting grounds are failing because you overhunted them for generations. You bred your prey to extinction because you never learned to balance taking with preserving. I have recovery projections here. If you implement controlled hunting zones and sustainable harvesting practices, you can restore the ecosystem within 5 cycles. You dare lecture us?" A younger elder stepped forward, his teeth bared in threat. "You, who cannot hunt?" "I cannot hunt," Rila agreed calmly. "I also cannot fly a ship, but my pilot does that. I cannot heal wounds, but my medic does that. I cannot repair engines, but my engineer does that." She met the elder's glare without flinching. "Each member of my crew does what they do best. Together, we accomplish more than any of us could alone." "Pretty words," the chief elder said. "But words do not fill empty bellies. No, they don't." Rila gestured to the cargo ships behind her. "But these supplies will. Enough food to feed your remaining packs for 6 months. Medical equipment to treat the sick. Agricultural seeds to start farms that don't depend on hunting." She paused. "I can save your people from starvation if you let me. And what do you want in return?" The chief elder's voice was suspicious. "Nothing comes free." Rila had thought about this question during the long journey. She had imagined demanding apologies, forcing the elders to admit they were wrong, making her mother beg for forgiveness. But standing here now, looking at the starving faces of the people who had thrown her away, she found that revenge no longer interested her. "I want you to change," she said. "No more exiling cubs who can't hunt. No more measuring worth by a single standard. Every Vellani who is born different gets a chance to find their own path." The crowd murmured. The chief elder's eyes went wide. "You ask us to abandon our traditions, our culture. I ask you to survive," Rila said. "Your traditions are killing you. Your culture couldn't save you from this plague. But change can." She looked around at the gathered Vellani, the proud hunters who had once considered her worthless. "I was thrown away because I was born wrong. A human found me and showed me that wrong is just different. Different is just another kind of strength. I'm standing here today because someone believed I had worth when no one else did." She pointed at Dohyun, who stood quietly behind her. "That human saved my life. His people have 1,000 ways to be useful. They don't throw away their children because they're different. They find what each person can do and help them do it." Her voice softened. "Let me help you learn the same thing." The silence stretched on. Rila could see the elders conferring, their expressions ranging from anger to doubt to something that might have been hope. Finally, the chief elder bowed his head. "Show us your way." Rila of the Perseverance. Rila felt something release in her chest. 6 cycles of waiting. 6 cycles of wondering if she would ever face the people who had abandoned her. Now she had her answer. She was not here for revenge. She was here to show them who she had become. "Follow me," she said. "We have a lot of work to do." Part 5. The Legacy. The recovery took 2 cycles. Rila worked harder than she had ever worked in her life. She coordinated supply shipments from across the sector. She designed sustainable hunting zones that would allow the prey animals to recover. She established trade agreements with agricultural worlds that could provide food while the ecosystem healed. She created education programs that taught young Vellani skills beyond the hunt mathematics. Engineering, medicine, art. Not everyone accepted the changes. Some of the older packs refused to adapt. They called Rila a traitor, a defective who had corrupted her people with foreign ideas. 3 packs left for the outer territories, determined to maintain the old ways, even if it meant struggling alone. Rila let them go. She had learned that you cannot force someone to change. You can only show them a better path and hope they choose to walk it. But most of the Villani stayed. Most of them learned. The younger generations embraced the new ways with enthusiasm that surprised even Rila. Cubs who once would have been exiled for physical differences now found places in workshops, medical centers, and trading offices. A young Villani with poor eyesight became an expert in communication systems. Another with a weak heart discovered a talent for teaching. A third, born deaf, developed a new form of sign language that spread across the entire planet. The old elders watched all of this with expressions that shifted from confusion to reluctant acceptance to something that might have been shame. Rila did not gloat. She did not remind them of their past cruelty. She simply worked, day after day, helping her people become something new. On the day she prepared to leave, her mother came to see her. They met in the garden that Rila had helped plant near the main settlement. Flowers from a dozen different worlds bloomed in neat rows. Fruit trees, grown from the seeds the perseverance had brought, were already bearing their first harvest. It was a place of beauty and growth, something the Villani had never valued before. Rila's mother walked slowly through the garden, her amber eyes taking in every detail. She looked older than Rila remembered, smaller. The fierce pride that had once made her untouchable was gone, replaced by something quieter and sadder. "I was wrong," she said finally. The words seemed to cost her greatly, each one dragged up from somewhere deep and painful. "When I left you on that station, when I let them take you, I thought I was being merciful. I thought a quick end would be better than a life of shame." She paused, her voice breaking. "I see now that I was the one who was blind. Not you." Rila stood in silence. She had imagined this conversation many times over the years. In her younger fantasies, she had screamed at her mother, demanded apologies, made her suffer for every moment of pain and loneliness. But standing here now, looking at this broken old woman, she found that the anger had faded. It was still there, buried deep. It probably always would be, but it no longer controlled her. "You followed your culture," Rila said. "You did what you were taught to do. I don't forgive you. I'm not sure I ever can. But I understand." Her mother nodded slowly, tears running down her silver fur. "The human who took you in. Was he good to you?" Rila looked toward the landing field, where the Perseverance waited. Dahyun was standing at the loading ramp, watching from a distance, giving her space, giving her time, as he always had. "He saved my life," Rila said. "He showed me that I was worth saving. He gave me a family when I had none and a purpose when I had lost everything." She turned back to her mother. "He made me strong." No. The words surprised Rila. Her mother was shaking her head. "No, child. I have watched you these past 2 cycles. I have seen what you have done for our people. The human gave you a chance, but the strength was always yours. He simply helped you find it." Rila felt tears prick at her own eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "I have to go," she said. "There are other worlds that need help. Other people who have been told they're worthless. Will you come back?" Rila considered the question. This world had hurt her deeply. Its traditions had nearly destroyed her. She owed it nothing, but it was also the place where she had been born. The place where, against all odds, she had returned to make a difference. "Maybe," she said. "Someday. When I'm ready." Her mother reached out hesitantly, then stopped herself. Among the Villani, touch was still reserved for close family. and they had not been family for a very long time. Rila made a choice. She stepped forward and pressed her head against her mother's chest, a gesture of forgiveness. She was not entirely sure she felt, but wanted to try anyway. Her mother froze for a moment. Then her arms came up, wrapping around Rila in the first embrace they had shared since she was a tiny cub. They stood there for a long time. Rila boarded the Perseverance an hour later. The ramp closed behind her, sealing her off from the planet she had saved. She walked to the bridge, where the crew was waiting. Do-yoon sat in the captain's chair. Yoonji was at the engineering station, her scarred hands dancing over the controls. Taiwoo was in the pilot's seat, ready to take them into the stars. Nari and Junho stood nearby, smiling. "Where next, Captain?" Taiwoo asked. Do-yoon looked at Rila. "That's her call. She's the navigator." Rila pulled up the star charts on the main display. The familiar flow of numbers and patterns washed over her, comfortable as an old friend. She could see routes and possibilities spreading out before her like threads of light, each one leading to somewhere new. "The Harath cluster," she said. 3 colonies are reporting supply shortages. The local government is struggling to provide aid. We could make a difference there. Then that's where we go. Do-hyun nodded to Taiwoo. "Take us out." The Perseverance lifted off, rising smoothly into the sky. Through the viewport, Rila watched the Vellani homeworld shrink below them. She could see the settlements, the new farms, the recovery zones. She could see the place where she had been born defective and the place where she had returned as something more below. Vellani cubs were watching the ship disappear into the clouds. Some of them were different, born with twisted limbs or dull claws or weak hearts. Once, they would have been cast out. Now, they looked up at the stars and dreamed of possibilities. Rila hoped they would find their own strengths, as she had found hers. "Thank you," she said quietly. To no one in particular. Do-yoon heard anyway. He always did. For what? For seeing who I could be before I saw it myself. For not giving up on me when everyone else had. She looked at him, at this human who had found a broken cub on a dying station and refused to leave her behind. For showing me that being different isn't the same as being worthless. He smiled, warm and proud. That's what family does. Rila looked around the bridge at the crew who had become her home. Yoonji with her scarred hands that built miracles. Taiwoo with his anxious heart and steady piloting. Nari who fainted at blood, but healed wounds anyway. Junho with his failing eyes and sharp mind. Do-hyun with his weak heart that was somehow the strongest she had ever known. They were all different. They were all broken in some way. And together, they were something wonderful. "So," Taiwoo said, grinning as the stars began to streak past the viewport. "Think we'll find any more lost cubs out there?" "Probably," Rila said. "The galaxy is full of people who have been told they're useless. Someone needs to show them they're wrong. And that someone is us?" Rila smiled. "That someone is us." The Perseverance flew on, carrying its crew of supposed defectives toward whatever the galaxy needed next. Behind them, a world was learning to measure worth in new ways. Ahead of them, countless beings waited to discover that different was just another kind of useful. And Rila, who had once been nothing, who had been thrown away like garbage, who had survived against all odds, stood on the bridge of her family's ship and looked toward the future. She couldn't hunt. She never would. But she could navigate stars, predict markets, save planets, and show others who they could be. And that was more than enough. That was everything.